Well, this was a day that a lot of people were looking forward to. All That Remains, The Order of Things. This is a band that a lot of you have wanted me to talk about, but not for the reason of this album, but because of Phil's comments, saying that they have transcended metal and all this other crap. I've kind of quibbed at it a little bit in past videos. You haven't transcended anything. There's really nothing to transcend, but I can kind of understand where he's coming from. He's speaking like he's kind of polished the band a little bit more, where it's become a little bit more geared toward rock, where they've kind of expanded their sound a little bit, and that's definitely something that is apparent. It's something that you can hear on The Order of Things as a great example. Right here on this very album, this is one that definitely combines the All That Remains of old, one that has the metalcore significance, and the All That Remains of new, which definitely reminds me of something very geared toward either the radio or at least the more modern edge of what's considered to be either metal or heavy alternative. The bands that would come to mind are Bullet for My Valentine and also perhaps Five Finger Death Punch. There's definitely a little bit of a draw there, and it certainly is very apparent. And it's definitely as though All That Remains saw what happened whenever a band such as Avenged Sevenfold dropped the majority, if not all, of their previous metal gimmick and kind of just went for a more straightforward, kind of straight heavy metal approach as opposed to kind of falling within a niche, and how it's kind of brought them success. This is an album that it sounds just as confusing as I just described it. That was probably fucking ridiculous. But it's true, because this is an album that has both clean and rough style vocals on it. It's something that's not quite 50-50, even though Phil claims that it is. It's actually something where I would actually put the plain, clean singing at about 70% as opposed to 50. So 70-30 in that variety and that direction. And the riffage and the overall musicality on this album definitely showcases a band that is trying to show that they can do both sides, that they have in fact transcended the genre. They're able to have an aggressive side, and at the same time they're able to kind of cool it back a little bit and have something that has a little bit of heart or a little bit of character to it. The problem with this tends to be that whenever a band attempts to try to bring two sides together, they fail at both of them. Because both sides are just purely average. It's something that does not have a captivating real element to it. Nothing shines out as truly spectacular from the other. And this is actually a problem that this album suffers from. This is something that The Order of Things actually suffers from. Their previous album, Overcome, was one that just didn't kind of feel right. In fact, the last two albums from All That Remains were just not really all of that good. They were kind of just mediocre to average at best, and definitely had all of the paintings of a band that was falling from grace. This album definitely feels like it's put together a little bit better. It's one that has a little bit more of a sense of purpose, and it's one that certainly seems as though it's trying to accomplish something. It's not just a brand new experiment, either that, or it's not an album that's directly trying to kind of please some old school fans while trying to gain some in the process, a la Black Album. I remember whenever the last album came out, it was kind of like that. What I think the major drawback of The Order of Things is that for all the things that it does right, for all of the melodies that definitely have a nice crisp fluidity to them and definitely feel like they have a home not only on the record but in the rock and roll and heavy metal universe, there are an equal number of elements that just feel kind of typical. There's a lot of typicalities on this album, a lot of old school, very, very cliche hard rock or heavy metalisms, almost as though All That Remains is trying to latch onto a movement that's trying to make power ballads or some sort of classic rock, almost as though they're trying to make this genre of music, this kind of blend of metalcore and heavy metal, the new hair metal that essentially has arena rock staples flowing all through it, but at the same time, besides this little bad boy hair metal image, also has that heavy side, that side that has a little bit of a snarl to it, a little bit of bite. And this album just doesn't have that bite to it. At times it actually comes off very pretentious, and at times it also comes off as exceptionally dense. It's one where it seems, lyrically at least, Phil is convinced with some of these tracks that he's no longer paying attention to individuals. He's now doing things on his own and everything like that. And it's just an idea that doesn't even... I don't understand why people put this into music. I don't understand why people put into music shit about being criticized, being critiqued, having people say one thing or the other. The fact that you have I understand it's easy inspiration, but you are not doing yourself any favors, at least in my opinion. This is something that's meant to kind of directly call out these individuals and basically tell them, hey, fuck you, say what you want, I'm not listening. But what it actually reads as is, I've been listening this whole entire time and care enough to write a song about it, to say that I'm not going to listen anymore. It's just like a teenager that says, fuck love, I'm never going to love again, and then 2 days later is swooning over a new crush. It's the exact same principle, and it's not something that needs to be in music. So fucking stop it. Every band out there, don't care who the fuck you are. I especially recognize that a lot within this brand new slew and crop of bands that gets a lot of critique and a lot of hate. Just understand that even though it seems like direct assault, direct attack, it's criticism, and it is positive or negative reinforcement that is also getting people talking about you. So there is a place for it, just fucking accept it. And if you want to say, fuck all of you, don't say anything. Just go about with your career and continue to wow us with impressive music. This album doesn't feel like it has that impressive quality to it. Instead, it feels like it just sort of lingers in the background a little bit, and that's all the more it does. It doesn't have any sort of sentimental quality. It doesn't even have anything that really stands out. It's an album full of pretty mediocre to average tracks that just so happen to have a nice cohesive blend and a well enough trimmed flow to it that it's able to kind of accomplish the role of getting from point A to point B. I especially like the fact that they have a song on here called Tru-Kvlt Metal, which actually, I'm not going to lie, is all talking about how you're not going to be a part of a trend. And let's face it, Phil and guys, by saying that you're part of a trend, by experimenting with this side of you, this new side of you, where you've transcended metal, that's part of a trend. It's part of something that's going on. It's part of a scene. Everything is part of a scene, you know. Tru-Kvlt metal is a myth, and I'm going to have to address this directly, but it's something that comes up because people want to separate what they consider to be, you know, good and acceptable music, so to speak, from bad music, and it's really just kind of dumb, but more on that later on. This album just feels like it doesn't have nearly enough of a punch or an it factor to it in order to truthfully mesmerize. It does what it can, and for what it's worth, it definitely feels like an improvement from the previous two records, but it just still doesn't have that punch. It seems like this is one that tries to have a dual personality, and both of those personalities are just, you know, they're kind of alright to hang around with, but you're not exactly, you know, changing plans in order to, you know, make sure that you have them as a part of them. That's kind of the best way to describe this album. You know, musically speaking, it's okay. I wouldn't even consider it to be above average. I would consider it just to be average at best. The one thing I will say is that Phil is a decent singer. He's a decent vocalist. He definitely has that going for him. So I can understand where it's not that hard of a thing to imagine that he's able to, you know, move over into this side, because he does have the vocal chops. He's not just a man who can, you know, do death metal vocals, either that or, you know, metalcore vocals, whatever you would like to call them, non-clean vocals. That's the only thing he needs to be successful. He definitely has both sides, so I definitely got to praise Phil on that. Transcended metal, I don't think so. This is something that actually still remains within not only the metal category, but is one that's trying to stick with it as long as humanly possible. It's almost trying to exhaust the idea. Mainly because it flip-flops back and forth from the metalcore back into what I would consider to be more of a traditional heavy approach, a traditional hard rock approach, an arena metal approach almost, as though they're going to try to infect that idea, which is not going to happen, by the way. This album just doesn't work in its entirety. It's one that works just in choice moments, and those choice moments are not very memorable. Not very memorable at all. 70 out of 100. It's a 7 out of 10. It's still a fair enough album where I would definitely encourage All That Remains fans of the newer material especially to check this one out. Fans of bands such as Avenged Sevenfold, Bullet for My Valentine, Five Finger Death Punch, the bands that I listed throughout the video, definitely check this out. I think you're going to find a couple things on here you're really, really going to enjoy. That's as fair as I can be, and that's as fair as I'm going to get. What did you guys think about the order of things? What do you guys think about All That Remains? Did Phil really transcend metal, or is Phil just transcending his own mouth and becoming an even bigger douchebag where he's trying to threaten the list for 2015 Douchebag of the Year? Yeah, Gene Simmons can't hold the title twice in a row unless he fucking says something retarded like, you know, rock and roll is actually a gigantic pancake and Lady Gaga is the most central heavy metal figure in the universe. Ouch, that just hurt my own fucking brain. What did you guys think about the album? Leave it in the comments below. That's about it. I'll talk to you later. Peace.